Introductions here today. My name's Chad Erickson, and I'm the Vice President of Strategy at My Advice. I'm located in Park City, Utah, and this is my 25th year of being a medical marketer. So I've been helping medical practice with their marketing since '99. It is incredible to think back of all the changes that have taken place, and we're going to be talking about the evolving landscape. And as I think about the past 25 years and how the landscape has changed and what we are seeing in the marketplace today, it kind of blows my mind to think about where marketing was then compared to now. I mean, uh, I was in the dot-com boom when it was still yellow pages were going to hold on. Some of you don't even know what yellow pages are, and that's okay, and that's great. Med spas didn't exist. Honestly, they didn't. Plastic surgery practices were strong, dermatology practices were strong, but this whole idea of this other evolution wasn't around. And so being able to see that is great. But with that comes some new evolutions. We're going to talk about those today. As our topic is really understanding the search engine optimization and legal updates for aesthetic practices. And we have two amazing experts here today to really guide you along this path. So first, Sarah Schickman. Sarah is the CEO and founder of Lingia Law, and she's based out of New York. And then we also have Michael Antosi, who is our senior practice consultant. He is with My Advice. He's been with our company for over 9 years, but prior to that, he was in medical marketing with another company for many years. And so, again, you've got two amazing individuals, and I'm going to let them tell a little bit more about their story. We'll kind of dive in. So, Sarah, why don't you start? Give a little bit more of your background and your passion around aesthetics and legal, and how those sort of bridge together. I think it's a great story.
Perfect. Thank you, Chad. Nice to be here. So since we're having a competition of who's been doing this longer, I could say I've been a lawyer since 2007. So, almost 20 years now. Before starting, I was the general counsel and the head of sales and marketing at a multi-state med spa. So I know this business a little bit as an operator too. And I've seen a lot of changes, and I've seen the pace of changes accelerating, especially in the last probably year and a half. So this webinar is going to be really about some of the new developments and how to prepare for them and how to be protected should anything happen.
Awesome.
That's great.
Michael.
Hey guys, first of all, I just have to apologize for my voice. For those of you who might be watching this, if you were at AM Spa last weekend in Vegas, it's actually a miracle that I'm talking right now, because at Monday I could barely speak above a whisper. So, but nice to meet you all. Michael Antosi, as Chad mentioned, I'm one of our senior practice growth consultants here with My Advice. I've been in this industry, actually I'm going on my 15th year. So Chad, I'm actually catching up to you and Sarah as well. I'll gladly take the junior role though in this webinar. But bring a lot of experience. I love really working with practice owners, helping them to kind of understand the right layers of really driving your internet strategy. And kind of the whole thesis for this presentation here today is that we've seen a lot of changes in the legal framework. We've actually seen a ton of changes really within digital marketing over the last 12 months, especially with the onset of AI and what Google is doing to really press against that. It's really reshuffling a lot of the trafficking deck or visibility opportunities just in terms of how aesthetics practices are really marketing themselves. And so really good to dive in today to teach you guys a little bit more about some of the changes that we're seeing, as well as how you can face some of these headwinds.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. So Sarah, let me throw it over to you first. Can you provide for our audience an overview of current trends in the med spa industry and how they're impacted by some of the recent changes in healthcare legislation in the U.S.?
Yeah, definitely. Some of the most recent trends are freedom and increased practice authority for nurse practitioners and physician assistants. So in many states, whereas even 2-3 years ago, nurse practitioners could not open up their own practice, now they can. And even with physician assistants, the same trend is happening at a little bit of a slower pace. And the other big trend is a huge uptick in investigations. So whereas it used to be in some states like New Jersey, for example, where we would have hundreds of clients, but maybe one investigation. Now we see much more activity related to that. And that's been accelerating. So we have we hear about some practices who may get 5 complaints against them in like 1 month, whereas before they wouldn't get anything in 5 years.
So, Sarah, kind of a follow-up to that, why do you think that is?
I think that there's a lot more competition now, and there are a lot more people are finding out about these methods. So in terms of the investigations, I think in a lot of states, there's no pre-opening investigation process. Like, for example, to open a salon in many states, you have to get a salon license. Somebody comes out to inspect your space. But for a med spa, you don't have any of that. So because of that, anyone can really open one compliantly or non-compliantly. But now, you have these established competitors, they see a new person opening and they're like, whoa, I just spent millions of dollars developing my location, and now this new person is there and I see they're not compliant. Let me report them. So I think that's what's happening. And then the other hand, why are there more independent practice authority states for nurse practitioners, for example? I think nurse practitioners have a really good, strong lobby. Nurse practitioners get lots of great education, and they've been pushing for this for many years. And I think it's really turning the tide. But at the same time, as we get these different deaths, complaints of things like counterfeit Botox and all these things that are happening now that we hear about on the news, I think that that's putting a lot of pressure on our legislators to say, wait, forget about what we've been doing. Let's try to make it go the other way and make it more restrictive. So with every new death, with every new claim that someone got counterfeit stuff, it's pushing the legislation the other way.
Fascinating. So we have a volume situation, we have competitive landscape, and we have local jurisdiction trying to figure out kind of what to do and how to respond. And I think one of the things that I think is interesting, and if our audience isn't aware, maybe you could touch on some of the things, because this is something you shared with Michael and I when we were together recently, was how the laws state by state vary. Talk about that a little bit, because I think that's fascinating, and everybody here needs to understand that what you're going to hear today, take it as a top level, but understand if you're looking for something specific, you're going to need to talk to Sarah and her team, because the laws for your state, which her team keeps up on, are changing. So why don't you talk about that a little bit more, Sarah?
Yeah, it's really fascinating and to a lot of people, and is a really good point. So the laws in every state for what constitutes a medical procedure, or what's a healthcare business, or how it should be legally structured, or who can do what procedure, are completely different. It's all state law. It's pretty much none of it is federal law. So to give you like an example, the law in New York and Florida, or New York and Texas, New York and Ohio, completely different. So in one state, an RN can, let's say, inject Botox. In another state, for an RN to do that, a physician has to be on site. In another state, an RN cannot inject Botox at all. Like, that's how different the laws are.
Easy. Yeah, it's insane to think that there's so many variations right now, with everything. So yeah, really, really fascinating on that front. I've got another question. I want you to think about this one. Before you answer, I'm gonna kick you over to Michael, but think about this one. Think about technology advancements and how that's impacting things and influencing, certain considerations for med spas. So I think it'll kind of piggytail a little bit on Michael. So Michael, you talked about some things that are happening on the marketing side, and certainly you and I are very close to this. We see it all the time. But can you describe kind of what is happening, what Google's doing, and you can kind of tell them a little bit more about what search engine optimization looks like today, how to really how do you win at this game that's so competitive and with a landscape in online marketing that seems to be changing all the time?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Sarah had just mentioned is that there's a lot of these threats which are coming from multiple different places, right? It's not necessarily just one main thing. It's, kind of different directions. And we've seen a lot of this as it relates to the changing landscape within Google searching and really how practices are best optimized to really push their websites online. Let me just kind of set a kind of a given, Chad. When we talk about this whole phrase SEO, search engine optimization, I'm sure that for those folks that are watching this here today, you've heard of this before. You apply what your website is to that. It's basically how your website is ranking on Google. So are you, number one in your local market for Morpheus 8, or are you, say, position 20? By the way, we actually don't talk in Google pages anymore because there are no pages of search. It's just one big long scrolling algorithm. But there's a big thing that happened about a year and a half ago that really, I would say, has changed the consciousness of humanity in terms of just technological advancements. It's that word AI, artificial intelligence. When ChatGPT came out, it really was a game changer just in terms of accelerating how AI is going to be used in different applications in our daily lives, as well as how we market our businesses. So you've always heard about Google and relative to SEO, how its content is king. Content is king. It's all about content, having great content, great content. And Chad, I'll tell you, Google as a system makes many changes on a daily basis. It's actually 9 updates on average per day, but these are very small updates. They're different changes or tweaks to the algorithm. And Google collects a lot of data on people. It's not just about how you use it for search. It's about how you use it on YouTube or how you might use Google Maps. I mean, there's all these suites of applications which are kind of free products, but at the end of the day, Google's enriching itself by collecting more data on its users. So these updates, they can be very small, but every few years we've seen some big updates to this algorithm, but they're very infrequent. You might have heard them called the Hummingbird update or the Panda update, the Medic update. Since about a year and a half ago, we've actually seen 3 core updates to Google's algorithm. These are big, big, big updates. And frankly, as marketers, it's been intense. The reason what Google is doing, though, is to really combat against AI. And, it's very easy for me as a potential business owner, especially if I'm starting my practice, to open up a website like ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, here's a writing sample of mine. Analyze my writing sample. Now what I want you to do is I want you to write me a 1,500 word page in question and answer based format on the most common questions that people are asking about Botox. And I want you to be able to produce that. And literally within a few seconds, Google can produce that. Now, we've always heard as it relates to content, how it needs to be unique, how it needs to be original. And frankly, if we take that example, that could be considered a unique and original content, but it's not necessarily content that is well optimized to give people the right information. So this word, and for those of you who are optimizing your websites right now, you want to remember this. It's called information gain. It's otherwise called Google's helpful content update. And Google's made a lot of changes to how it's qualifying content. It's not just about writing content for keywords or bots or spiders, but really content that's for the people. And, as an organization, with my advice, this is actually something I feel like we've kind of been ahead of the curve on, because we've always seen that relating to SEO, it's always been a multifaceted approach. It's not just about having good information on your website, but it's also about supplementary things as well, too. So what Google's really wanting to see is content that is written with experience, with expertise. In other words, is your content reflecting the authority of you? Do you talk about information that people want to Google search about? So for example, like, do you have questions and answers written on your core pages of your website? But there's also periphery factors as well, too. Do you have good reviews online? Do you have an active social media? Are you well positioned on a localized level? One of the biggest things that we've also seen in terms of how Google is changing the update or the algorithm update is that inferior pages on a website can really be trafficking killers. What I mean by that is that oftentimes when, especially when a practice is growing, maybe they say, I really want to concentrate on procedure X, but I don't really care about these supplemental things. We do them because we have to, but we don't really care about that content, but we really want to beef up content on that one main thing. Well, the unfortunate thing right now is what we have seen is that that supplemental content that you don't really care about, that can really hurt your optimization for that main thing that you're really trying to promote. So never has it really been more important to really have a very well-structured website on everything that you're doing. This is something that we talk about, but Google has a favorite website. And for those who are maybe thinking about this rhetorically, I'll just give you a few hints. It's not a shopping cart website, nor is it google.com, nor is it even a social media website. But I would encourage you to Google anything that you might be interested in. And it's very likely, I'm going to give you a 95% confidence rate that somewhere in the first 10 slots of that Google search is the website Wikipedia. And Google loves Wikipedia because that is a website that really covers topics very, very holistically from many, many, many different angles. And so really, to really be at the forefront now of your SEO is that you want to think about your website being like the Wikipedia of aesthetic medicine in your local market. Are you developing content, great content on all the services at your practice? Do you have dedicated pages for those things? Are you concentrating on building consistent Google reviews, good social media? And this is really why I would say too, in today's age, never has it been more important that you really have a partner that can help you to navigate these headwinds. Because even what we have seen over the last 12 months or so, search has been in constant flux. And so having a partner that's been kind of the 10,000 hour principle, if you will, that has really been able to navigate these changes historically is really going to help to put your practice in the most winning position as it relates to being at the top of search.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, thank you. I want to come back to you in a minute. Be thinking about I think the question is, okay, Michael, I understand content, really specialized, really focused. And I think that the challenge for these practices listening today is I have limited hours. I have so much on my plate. How do I do this? Now what? So think about that a little bit and we'll come back to you. So Sarah, kind of kicking it back on this technology idea. Let's toss that around a little bit. How are some of these technology advancements impacting the legal space right now?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of questions about like who owns the content, for example, or if you take content that was written by Chat GPT and put it on your website, do you really, does that content really belong to you? And let's say you just use content that was written by Chat GPT and you didn't carefully proofread it, and then you put it on your website and it's medically inaccurate or legally inaccurate. Is that okay? Or let's say you could put into a Chat GPT that you want I don't know, a medical director contract, and you'll get one. But that contract most likely is not going to be right for what you need. It's not going to tell you right now, at least it's not going to tell you this is the contract that you need. This is legal advice. It's going to say you need to consult a lawyer licensed in your state. But I think everything is changing and changing at a much more rapid pace. And as we sometimes clients hire us and they say like, oh, is my consent for X product comprehensive? This brand new product that just came in that just got FDA approved for something. It's hard for it to be comprehensive always because things are always changing. There are always new indications. And in your marketing of it, you have to also be careful, which, Michael knows even more than me. But if, let's say you're marketing something and it's not FDA approved or only FDA approved for one thing, but you're saying something else, you can get into big trouble. So it's really important that rather than trying to like do these things piecemeal yourself, to work with someone who actually like knows what they're doing and is specialized in medical.
Yeah,
definitely. And that's a great case. I also want to ask, one of the challenges that we've seen, and this is just sort of the bad side of people, right, is when you think about PHI data, HIPAA laws, and having, making sure that your technology is secure. Thinking about your practice management software, EMR, having insurance. I know several plastic surgeons who woke up one day and all of their files were held, were captured, and they had to figure out how to pay for a ransom for those. Can you talk a little bit about some of those things and how to protect, how these practices? I mean, they might not even be thinking about this, thinking that happens. So, I know you've had cases like this. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's a huge proliferation of new online scams, and also insurance against those scams, and also apps and plugins against the scams, and also the non-scams. So for there all these new types of lawyers, I hate that they're lawyers, but they are, who are like going after these weird things that your website may be missing, or these different ransom companies who are saying, okay, like we stole your website and now you owe us X. And if you don't give it to us, it's all going to be deleted, including, all your files. So there are plugins that I know your guys' company can help people install, and all these other updates where you could make your website more secure against cyber attacks. You need to make your website ADA compliant, and there are plugins for that, and we can talk about that as well. So there are lots of ways to protect yourself, but there are like new ways every day that people's websites and data gets attacked from a technology standpoint, and also from a people standpoint. Like, people have disgruntled ex-employees and they take all your patient files. And if your system is not encrypted, and if you're using some, I don't know, paper charts or some old software that would allow someone to physically like download people's charts without noticing very quickly, it becomes a big problem. So I think with new technology developments, there's a lot of change happening, but there's also people who are not updating their own stuff and just using old software and their old website that they gave their password to their developer 5 years ago and they never changed it, and now like, oops, like everything got deleted. Like, yeah, that happens a lot. And unfortunately, when people come to us with stuff like that, I have to remind them that I'm a lawyer, not a magician. Like, there's only so much I can do to help after the fact.
Very, very true. So with that, what strategies do you recommend for med spas, many that's who a lot of our audience is today, to stay compliant with these laws that are changing from a technology standpoint, as well as just these state by state laws? How,
I think there's no substitute for having like good professional consultants on your team, whether it's lawyers or business consultants or a marketing company. Like, all of our clients are busy. I get that. And these things are not free. I get that too, but not having them is so much more expensive. So I think to keep compliant and to stay on top of it, both of our companies have really good blogs. And so we always publish like updates to things that are happening, and for our clients, we send out emails. So I think things like that are good, but there's no substitute for, working with a professional. And also not relying on what your competitors are doing or not doing. So it could be that like you may look around and you may see like the biggest practice in your town has a website and it looks a certain way and it maybe doesn't have certain things, but or they use paper charts or some old software for all their practice management, but that doesn't make it right. With the new changes of technology, there's so many great cloud-based platforms that people can use that I think it's a shame when people are not using them, because again, after the fact, fixing them through your lawyer is very expensive.
Yeah, a lot of what I heard you say is figure out who your team is in advance, rely on that team, but do it in advance. It's tough to be, you're not really a magician, right? I can help you, but if we have the conversations early and we put in certain processes that are going to protect down the road, then down the road everything is really going to be protected. It's the after the fact of, oh shoot, I should have done this, I should have done that. Now we're kicking these practices we talk to all the time are kicking themselves because again, we know how busy you are. You're running a practice. You're running yourselves ragged at times, wearing so many hats within a practice. You're an entrepreneur. You worry about payroll. You worry about your rent. You worry about your patients. You worry about your families, or your personal life. You have all these different things that you're wearing, and to think about the marketing, the legal space, my software, my devices, and all these other parts, and employees that might rip me off, and bad reviews I might receive, and what goes in my social media, and oh my gosh, the list just could feel endless. And sometimes you're like, why am I doing this? And yet, that's why we're here. We're here to help you. And so it's a lot of prioritization, figuring out what matters most. And if you can get a lot of things lined up and really create a great process, then you won't feel like you're chasing your tail all the time, where it's like putting out one fire to another. It's, wow, we've got this. And so, yes, more work at the beginning can lead to an easier path down the road. So Michael, coming back, yeah, please build on that, and then let's come back to that other question.
Just that before we kind of continue here, I would say that one of the biggest challenges, I think, if we talk about the root cause of what that problem is, it's lack of proper planning. Sarah, I don't know what you experience with some of the clients that you serve, but I talk to a lot of new startup business practices, and there's not a plan in place. It's like, I'm tired of working in the healthcare system. I want to open up my own practice, but the idea of putting together a business plan has not really crossed anyone's desk. The idea of what it actually costs to market or to protect yourself from a legal framework perspective is not something that practice owners are really thinking about. My encouragement for anyone that might be thinking about this or watching this is to really look at what this business is like a year down the line, 2 years down the line. And I know that no one does have a crystal ball, but you'd be amazed at how many times I talk to new practice owners, and really right from the get-go, I know that they're setting themselves up for failure because they don't have, say, good practice financing in place. There's no resources that they're really investing into to help to seed that capital so that way they can grow. And like what Sarah had mentioned, I think at some point in time, you will pay for it. If it's not today, it's about setting yourself, not setting up the infrastructure the right way today that will produce a failure point down the line. So I would definitely encourage you guys, for those who, again, are starting up a practice right now, build your stable of partners, people that understand the legal space like Sarah, like my advice from the marketing space. Bring on a practice financing company that can give you affordable rates, that really understands, what it's like to work with an aesthetics practice. I mean, really, when you start to build your team, you're really positioning yourself up to succeed for years and years and years down the line.
Thanks, Mike. So Mike, the question I'd asked you before we kind of shifted things around was, again, try not to overwhelm these practice owners who are listening today. How do they go about creating that rich content that's going to help the clients, the customers they're trying to gather, but also fit the need that Google's looking for without taking up all their time that they don't have? How do they, what are some easy things they could do? Give us one or two things.
Who's got one of these? I'm sure everybody does. I always tell my clients, if I could just follow you around all day long and just press record on my phone and listen to what you're saying to patients, after the full day, I would have all the content that I would need for your website. Because, our practitioners, you are the experts. This is what you do. This is your craft. This is your day in and day out, rinse, wash, repeat. No one has the worldview of aesthetics as what you do, because this is your own personal flavor and spin. So one of the things I would very much encourage you, especially if your practice is brand new and you know that you're going to be opening up a practice and starting out a website, or even if you're established, think about this on your drive home. What are the top, say, 5 procedures that you really want to be found for, that you want to see more patients around? Think about those top questions that your patients are always asking about those services or those procedures. List those questions down and literally record your voice. Answer those questions just like you're talking to a patient. There are automated tools that can listen to all of that text on that audio file and transcribe that into text. There's websites like Fiverr, which you can hire freelance people very, very, very inexpensively to just transcribe all of that data. So now you have a rich text format to then be able to then, have to start to cultivate and develop your website's content without taking a lot of time. That's number one. Secret as well too, when we talk about content, it's not necessarily just about text content. Coincidentally, the world's #2 search engine behind Google, which is also owned by Google, is YouTube. And YouTube has become much more rich with its content format and actually how that applies into overall website ranking. So alternatively, same device again, easy to do. Take out your iPhone. Everyone always make sure you hold your phone horizontally as opposed to vertically, because that way you'll get a lot of that black space over to the right and to the left-hand side of the video. But talk about those same things, questions and answers. You are the authority at doing what you're doing. I was just talking to a practitioner today, and I was like, listen, what are your top questions that you get on neuromodulators? And like, oh my God, my patients always ask this, or this, or this. Well, gosh, just get some good lighting on your face and just create a little video around that. You can upload that to YouTube. You can put that onto your social media. It doesn't necessarily have to be one track or one channel focused. Here's a pro tip though with YouTube is that when you actually turn on your closed captioning, all that text that you're speaking on that video can actually be converted into indexable text for Google searches. And so very efficient ways of being able to cultivate very, very strong content. It doesn't necessarily have to feel like climbing up a mountain. But if you just take a look at, chipping away at this piece by piece, everyone has a drive home, rather than listening to the radio or that podcast, maybe start to think about how can I start to get more of my mindset out there into text. That way I can start to develop a richer website for my practice.
Thanks, Mike. I've got 2 more questions I want to ask each of you, and then I want to turn it over to any questions that our audience has today. So, question that applies to both of you, and this question, I'm saying it's for kind of new entrants into the space, but it could be for really anyone who's on here saying, I've actually been in business for a little while. I still think there's going to be some takeaways for you. But Sarah and Michael, we'll go Sarah first, but what advice would you give to these new entrepreneurs, right? They're looking to enter this market. They're just getting started. What would be some things that they should be paying attention to on the legal side and then on the marketing side?
On the legal side, I would say because of the rapid changes that are happening, assume that if something that you're doing requires like a syringe or you puncturing the skin, assume that the boards in your state are going to think that that's a medical procedure. Don't think that it's not going to be. So take the safer approach. So for example, like with IV hydration, a lot of boards are coming out and explicitly saying IV hydration is the practice of medicine. And what that means then is you need to have a good faith exam by a prescriber before that's administered by perhaps a registered nurse. So to be on the safe side, my advice would be just do good faith exams, implement a good faith exam process in your practice, because when we represent people and they're under investigation, that's the #1 thing that's being investigated today. And the rate of that is increasing so much. So, and related to that, I would say, just be careful. And Michael could speak to this even more. Just be careful with how you're marketing things. Because if you're marketing things incorrectly, or if you're marketing one thing but selling another, so if you're marketing Ozempic but selling semaglutide or something like that, or if you're marketing Botox but selling Dysport, you can get into a lot of trouble from the manufacturers who have very big budgets to fight this. So just make sure that even if you're doing your ads yourself, that you have a marketing expert reviewing them before you launch them, because the potential liability is large.
I love that. Thank you very much. Michael.
So especially for the new practice owner, I mean, the one biggest concern is just budget, right? How am I going to afford this? So one of the things I would say from the marketing side is identifying a company that can really grow with you. What I've found is, my years of consulting in this space is that, especially new practice owners, they're signing up for these marketing contracts that really feel like they're exposing themselves to a lot of risk. And frankly, there's also a lot of predatory marketing companies, which are also out there as well too, which really want to sell you something very, very expensive, just so that way they can acquire as much from you as they can upfront. So having a company or identifying a process that can really start to grow with you, you do want to take the time to educate yourself with the right way of really constructing um, a digital marketing strategy that ultimately makes your marketing dollars run more efficiently. We talk about the marketing health of an entity. So it does take some time to educate yourself on that front. Working with a company that really, again, has a lot of longevity in that space that can really help you to identify and to take care of you on how to really grow without putting yourself into a position where you overspend to see less back. One of the things I would say just about my advice is that we are never here to oversell a client that we work with. We're here to educate you, to work with you, and to grow with you. But finding that scalability, I would say, is something as a new practice owner is really, really important. You might need some wins that might not necessarily cost a lot of money, but will help to add some immediate value. And really, once a marketing plan starts to really take hold, that can then grow with you. You can start to add more into that strategy over time if that's the directive that you ultimately wanted to take your practice in, if you want to start to become much more aggressive. But that's what I would say the key takeaways, Chad, that being in a comfortable financial position and know that you can grow with it.
I like that. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And one of the things that we try to offer as well is on that is understanding that business may not be your background. And so we try to help you understand how to evaluate, what your return on investment is. What are your key performance indicators? How to look at the data so that you're a data-driven company. And there's a lot that we really try to teach in that. We bring in a lot of experts for that. So that's great. All right, our last question before we open up to Q&A. I'm going to ask each of you to get out your crystal ball and think about the future, right? So there are some things that are changing. We talk about this ever-evolving evolution. So, and I know you both of you kind of have you're aware of things that are evolving and changing. It may not be there today, but the trends would indicate that things are happening. So why don't Sarah, why don't you talk about some of the things that you're looking ahead to, thinking may be coming on the legal side that will impact this space, and Michael talk about some of the things that are likely coming on the marketing side.
Yeah, I think on the legal side, more regulation is coming because different adverse events keep happening. So I think that legislators can't ignore when the news is plastered with things like people are dying from fake Botox and things like that. So right now the industry is regulated, but largely unregulated. And so I think there's going to be a lot more regulation. And on the other hand, I think that there are going to be a lot of new AI tools for doing patient assessments and some simple patient corrections as well. So I imagine a future where, there's just like right now, there's an AI robot that could apply, I think, eyelashes, and it's being sold like maybe on Amazon, I'm not sure. I could imagine a future where there's a robot that can do, microneedling, Botox, all kinds of procedures like that. So I think we have to get ready for that future. And by the way, like there's AI trying to do law too. So all of us at some level are going to be affected by AI, and we have to prepare for that, right? We at my firm already use AI to do some of our research, to review some documents. Like it's already a tool that's replacing, some of our more manual processes. So I think as practice owners, let's find ways to use AI for ourselves, right? If we know that it's coming to do patient assessments, let's find a way to incorporate that into our patient assessment. So wouldn't a customer be delighted and surprised and think your practice is really cool if you have some part of your initial face assessment done by some AI tool? I think so. And that could be a competitive advantage. So I think that's one of the big ways to prepare for the future.
I couldn't agree more. I got two things on that. One is one of the groups that we participate with, being in Utah, and I've attended some of their events, is called the Utah Injectors Association. And this is a great group, and they're getting together on about a monthly basis. And part of what they do is they are bringing in experts, and they're collaborating. And really, one of their goals is to make sure that they are the top of the line in everything they do, that they're staying aware of all the challenges, um, potential regulations coming. They want to make sure that, hey, we all need to sort of be like the rising tide raises all ships. If we're all above board and doing things the right way, we're not worried about you as competition because there's a lot of business to go around. The thing we need to be worried about is someone who's not following the regulations that's going to make our life harder. And so this is a group who are really coming together saying, we need to all be committed to being the best and following these regulations so that it's not harder to do business. It can be the same or easier as long as we're doing what's right. And I love that. On the AI front, we just had a big AI summit internally last week, and we brought in some other experts. My goodness, I thought I knew some things about AI, and then my mind was completely blown again. And the reality is I try to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes a day researching, playing with, utilizing AI. And we're also, like you, Sarah, we're always thinking about how do we do things differently or better. I'm not worried about replacement. I'm worried about people who don't know how to use it. And everyone needs to figure out how to use it to become more efficient. And I think one of the things you nailed, and one of the things that was shared in the summit we had last week was, if you think about what are the tasks, it's not the specialized tasks to worry about right now, it's the redundant task. And can you replace those, and or can you reduce the amount of time? So if your intake of a new patient right now takes 30 minutes, can you reduce that with AI on your part to only take 5 minutes, and allowing the technology and the onboarding and other things to do the rest? If you can do that, and you have 10 new patients a day, that's 250 minutes you get. Think about the savings of an employee, or your time. How much time, what would 250 minutes a day in that example mean to you in your life? What could you do with that? That's several hours a day, right? And so what else would you have a member of your staff be able to work on? How do you get more efficient? So again, thinking about it from that perspective of what can you do to remove the mundane to focus on what matters most in your business. So love it. All right, Michael, future, what are we seeing?
I don't know if I have anything more to add to that, Chad, to be honest with you. I was going to say, I mean, look, I think we all have to buckle up for the onslaught of the AI revolution. I would suppose, I think that both of you guys hit a lot of great points on that topic. I would just simply say, though, that I think that we have to look at these tools really as being additive to our life. The example that Chad had mentioned, just in terms of aggregating just 10 minutes, but you multiply that over several hours or days, and how that can help to save you money. AI is here to really help us. From the marketing side, gosh, we've even seen the example that I gave with being able to dictate your content. I mean, there are AI tools that can listen to an audio file and spit out word for word exactly what you have just said. So it's finding and identifying ways of how we can really use these technologies to enhance our user experience, to save us money, to add more value, as opposed to something that, looking at this through the lens of it being replacing my job. I mean, I crystal ball, that might be something that's 200 years down the line. I mean, I obviously won't be around at that point. I hope that humanity always has a role, though, in our stake of our success. But at the end of the day, I think that we really need to see this as being something that just adds value to our livelihood.
Excellent. Putting on that crystal ball, this much I can tell you on the marketing side. In 2014, Google made $66 billion with a B. That's a lot, right? Seems like a lot. In 2023, 9 years later, Google made $300 billion. And 90% of their revenue comes from paid advertisements, Google AdWords, pay per click advertising. And that is where they're really pushing things. And so be thinking about that as part of a strategy. I think that's an important thing, is understanding that evolution is happening. Google's going through their own changes right now. And so just being aware that there's a lot of competition out there for Google right now. There's a site called Perplexity. If you're not using that, It's interesting. It's a great website. You're going to get the immediate answer for what you are looking for. You don't have to go through a bunch of other things. Perplexity is an incredible website. Google's trying to figure out, shoot, how do we combat perplexity that, because they're losing a lot of users over to that that system. They know that they're already behind with ChatGPT. Now, can they catch up to them with their AI? Yeah, they had some major hiccups recently when they put out all their images. They know that they're behind. But guess what? They're a behemoth. Are they going to catch up? Absolutely. You think about what is X, meaning Elon Musk, going to do with their tool? It's coming. And what's that going to look like? And there's so many different tools out there. What do you use? How are these going to help you with marketing? Anyway, there's a lot of different things that are coming, and it's just be paying attention, I think is a lot of it. So, okay, you two, this has been great. Let's open it up to our audience. We've got a great audience today. If you've got some questions that you would like to ask Michael or Sarah, we've got the Q&A section on here. Why don't you go ahead and type those in, and I can get those over to them. So yeah, go ahead, take a minute or two. If you've got specific questions on either the marketing or the legal side, please go ahead and type your questions in, and let's let our audience, or let our two experts here answer those for you. And while we're waiting for a couple of questions to come in, I got a question for you. So Sarah, let me ask you this. What are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities that med spas are facing today? You've talked about some of the regulations, but what are some of the opportunities as well? We don't want to be the Debbie Downers here, but what are some of the opportunities you're seeing?
Well, I see practices being bought for a lot of money, relatively small practices. So I see practices with, let's say, I don't know, 300,000 to 500,000 in annual revenue, which is like one full-time provider in a lot of cases, being bought for, 500,000 or more. Not talking about what the profitability is, just talking about what the 1 year top line revenue is. So I have a lot of clients who are financial investors who are just looking to buy aesthetics practices so they could build a chain of practices. So there is a lot of opportunity for, if someone entered the business and is, did their time or wants to exit or do something else, or maybe wants a financial partner so you can open up more locations, there's a lot of opportunity there. And then there are also a lot of opportunities, especially with telemedicine. So there are lots of telemedicine companies doing really innovative things and doing really specialized treatment. So semaglutide telemedicine, hormone replacement telemedicine, hair loss telemedicine, all different types. So I think, and these companies are more marketing companies than they are med spas, actually. They have really proficient, super targeted marketing that they figured out, that they work with agencies on. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in building even a small practice and selling it if that's what someone wants to do. And then also building a pretty big telemedicine practice that has maybe one brick and mortar or no brick and mortar at all, but does business in all 50 states.
That's awesome. So one of our questions came in from Tanya. Thank you, Tanya. Is and Sarah, this one's for you. Along with GFE, should there be an order from your MD?
It depends. So there needs to be a patient-specific prescription for any medical treatment that includes the dosage. So if your GFE includes the order in it, then you don't need a separate order. But if your GFE just says patient Amy's cleared for Botox, then you need a separate order from a physician or another prescriber that says, okay, she's cleared for Botox, but I'm ordering 50 units for her.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Michael, question for you. How should somebody respond to a negative online review that they receive?
Oh, it's a question.
It's gonna happen.
Great.
What were you gonna say, Sarah?
I said, great question.
It's gonna happen at some point. Well, I would say the best way that you have to respond to a negative review is, first of all, you have to really take the review into context. You know, was it something that you really did drop the ball on, or was it clearly somebody that was just very, very crazy? I actually had a client of mine one time who was treating a patient with terminal cancer, and she had been estranged from her family, and just in her dying days, she wanted to, you know, look better, and so she went to my client for Botox, and you know, the inevitable happened. She passed away, and all of a sudden, the estranged sister comes into the world, into the picture, and says that my client had killed her sister, which was completely crazy. So the best way, though, because that will happen. I mean, you will have bad reviews at some point in time, and the thing is that it rarely ever has to deal with you. It's always about scheduling, billing, time I had to wait, so on and so forth. But you want to be proactive with your review strategy. You want to get ahead of that problem before it actually becomes a problem. So really the best way, Chad, of combating bad reviews is just to build more positive reviews, and to be proactive about that. So does your practice have some type of text-based application or tool that allows you to, you know, target a list of your patients, you know, ask them, you know, that's always something that we will encourage you to do, is to ask the patient to, if you can get feedback as opposed to a review. That word feedback is just a much more engaging term. And when they say, yeah, I'd be happy to leave you some feedback, then you send them out a text that integrates, you know, with a review platform. What we've actually found is that Google reviews are really the gold standard. That's where you want to be driving most of your digital equity through. It not only is just the first thing that we see when we Google the name of a practice, which is your Google profile, when we see those reviews, but it's about 20% of Google's algorithm in terms of what it's looking for to show some of the best websites in local search. With some of those changes that we had just talked about with Google, that's a part of what we would call the authority score of a practice. And so one of the biggest challenges that I see is that it's just a lack of consistency. You know, practices might generate a review per month or one every 2 months. You want to look at your Google review strategy really as a percentage of how many people that you see in a given week or a given month. Usually, you should be trying to at least target a 5 to 10% return rate of new reviews compared to how many people that you see. But certainly, having a text application that will help you with targeting, mass messaging is definitely something that's going to help you to meet those metrics and KPIs much quicker.
I love it. Yeah, you're not gonna make everybody happy, but respond to them and do your best to get them in, have a conversation. So it's great. All right. Another question is, I've seen Facebook removing posts that specifically use terms like Ozempic, semaglutide, tirzepatide, etc. Is there a legal concern using these specific drug names?
Yeah, so a lot of these specific drug names are trademarks owned by other people or other companies. And a lot of times, if you use a name that's trademarked, the other company can submit something to Facebook or Google saying, we're not allowing other people to use my trademark, take it down. Also, separately from that, some terms are considered more high risk, especially by Facebook. And so what happens is, if your ad contains one of those words, even if it's not a trademark claim, if Facebook is saying we've received a lot of complaints and legal stuff related to this particular word, we don't even want to deal with it, they may not approve your ad.
Ben, thanks for that. Ben has another question. Thanks, Sarah, for answering that. Because yes, we're seeing the same thing. When we do paid search ads, we have to be extremely careful on what terms can be used and not used. For example, you can't use Botox. You just have to be careful. There's a lot of different things you have to do to sort of work around and work in those systems, so you don't get your campaign shut down. So Ben has another question. What is the one must-have disclaimer a clinic should have on their website, or is it necessary? For example, these products have not been FDA approved, ... right?
I think really depends on what the practice is selling. So I think that there isn't like a one fits all that I would recommend to everyone. I would have to see the website and see, but generally, you know, you want to talk about it not being FDA approved for everything, or not being FDA approved at all, and the website not offering medical advice and things like that. Technically speaking, you're not allowed to like fill medical prescriptions online unless you fall into some exceptions. So You just have to be careful with like the language of the disclaimers too.
To piggyback on the website side as well, too, this is something that we've talked about previously, but it's also very important that your website has ADA compliancy on there as well, too. There's accessibility guidelines where, you know, you need to make your text size bigger or darken the contrast. And this is actually something that we talked about in our last webinar, but practices are unfortunately being served complaints because of just having very standard tools that should be on your website. So you definitely want to be careful about that, making sure that when you're a healthcare business, that's a very fundamental component that makes that fits a standard for a healthcare business.
Thanks. Two more questions, and then got to wrap it up. But Mike, real quick, is there any HIPAA compliance issue with requesting reviews from patients? Mike or Sarah, actually, it's legal, and also this is something we offer because we do have a software for this.
Legal, no issue with requesting reviews from patients. And if a patient decides to write, I had X and Y at this practice, that's on them. That's wonderful. I would just say, don't confirm or deny that when you reply to that review. Don't confirm, say, I'm so glad you had Botox. It was, you know, you could just, and Michael could speak to how to best reply.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to out what the patient had what they had done, but simply acknowledging your gratitude for leaving a positive review or positive feedback is definitely the appropriate way of responding to that review as well, too. The only thing I would just also just say is that, you know, asking your patients to what I mentioned earlier is definitely a key component to that. What we have actually found is it does take a little bit more legwork to, you know, get their buy-in to do that. But generally speaking, the returns that you get are going to be much stronger because the patient has then opted in to saying, yeah, I'd be happy to leave you that review.
Oh, it's wonderful. We have a few more questions, but we're out of time. What we're going to do with these additional questions is we're going to answer these directly. So we're going to follow up with you. So we appreciate you asking those. But we do have another thing, so I've got to wrap up. But we're going to respond to you. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for being here. Sarah and Michael, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. And I'm excited. We'll get these questions over to you so we can answer these and follow up with our audience. So thank you so much to everybody. And again, we'll get this recording out to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys.